I had one person who was combative to say, I just don't understand the point of this design research. And my poor face is like, I'm sorry, what? I maybe misunderstood you because there's no way you just looked in my face on a one-on-one video call and said you don't see the point of the boot camp you just paid $15,000 to be a part of.
So, Megan, hello. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you being here.
I'm so glad to be here and chat with you. Seriously, Blatz Chatz, are you kidding?
So, Megan, I like to start off with a broad question. And hey, what's on your mind these days?
What is on my mind these days has honestly been something that's in the collective consciousness. Are these boot camps scams or are they legitimately helping people get jobs, skill up, and become these valued members of our technological society? Or are they just selling the American dream as a potential, maybe you could have this and just taking people's money? That's been on my mind a lot lately.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. So something that I saw recently, and I actually posted it to my LinkedIn. It was a Reddit post by a design director. So they didn't really identify who they are and what industry they're in, just that they are a UX manager and they were looking to hire a junior designer so that they could help them skill up and come along. And they opened up a job on LinkedIn and got over 500 applicants in less than a week. And they were thinking, cool, I have so many options with all of these early career designers. I'm going to crack knuckles. I'm going to get in there and be really excited about waiting, separating the wheat from the chaff, if you will. And it turns out there's unfortunately a lot of chaff. And as a former boot camp instructor, that's normal. There are a lot of folks who take the idea and don't necessarily put in the time and effort to actually bring it to real fruition. I always say that in my classes, if I had an average of 30 students, somewhere between 1 and 3 would be stellar. Not only do you get it when I share A and B, but you take C and D, and then you ask questions that lead you down the road to E and F. Really go-getter, maybe have a little bit of context from previous experiences, maybe don't have, a design degree or anything like that, but they get it, they clip in. And then there's a lot of folks who are on the bell curve. They've got some experience or they've at least got some aptitude towards things and they're willing to do the work. And that's probably another 70%. So if that top percent is 5, then we've got some 75 and then we've got the bottom of the barrel. And this is really consistent across different cohorts. I've talked to people at multiple boot camps. I've talked to people who teach through the 2U, which is now edX. They're partnered with a ton of colleges and universities across the US and Canada. And yeah, there's just some people who show up thinking, they told me that I could do this, get a certificate, and get $100,000 a year job. And that's what I'm going to do. And they just refuse to do anything more than the bare minimum effort. And they don't participate in group projects. They're not communicative. I had one person who was combative to say, I just don't understand the point of this design research. And my poor face is like, I'm sorry, what? I maybe misunderstood you because there's no way you just looked in my face on a one-on-one video call and said you don't see the point of the boot camp you just paid $15,000 to be a part of. So your mileage may vary, but I think there's a lot of people who came in very well intentioned and hoped to do the work and really hoped to change their lives. These people are looking for family sustaining wages, not I work a day job for 8 hours and then I do gig work on the side in order to just barely make the minimum of what I need to accomplish to feed my kids and get cover my bills. I'm finding there's a lot of examples of where maybe there's some unethical, maybe not illegal, but definitely immoral and unethical in my book for how you've gotten people roped in and then just don't give them their money back. What I'm hoping I don't find, but I'm interested to know, and this is why it's been on my mind and I've been digging into it so much, is I'm wondering if there are financial crimes involved, perhaps with aligning with or shoveling, funneling people towards credit, scholarships, some sort not scholarships, what am I thinking of? Loans to take on this new challenge of upskilling and career changing. And maybe they might be making money from sending those students that direction? And if so, I would be very interested in finding out if we've got some things going on that are not on the up and up. So, no accusations, no expectations, but it sure does seem that there's a lot of people who are not getting what they paid for, or at least are not perceiving that they're getting what they paid for.
Yeah, and that's just one aspect, Megan, the financial side of things, right?
Yeah.
What about the lack of delivery on a promise?
Oof.
Not just a promise to get a job
Yeah.
is a
But
promise.
through education.
Right, but the promise that you're going to know what you need to know after this boot camp.
I do feel bad for people who take that particular statement at face value because really and truly, it does take in UX, it takes a lot of curiosity and willingness to go beyond. Here's the amount of information I was given. So I'm thinking of a paragraph or a sheet of information, and then kind of thinking outside of the box. What are the additional questions that I have that has not been provided to me in this? And this is very interesting because it kind of does tie into an old couple of years old article by Debbie Levitt about, are you a type A designer or a type B designer? And a type A, I might get these transposed, but one of them is a production designer. I'm an order taker. I do the tasks, I deliver my work, and I don't really have questions. I don't really challenge what who's answering or giving me these tasks to do, and I don't really use any critical thinking as part of my design process. And then there's the other hand, which is I am the critical thinker. I am considering the whole customer experience from when they are first introduced to the brand to when they close their account and everything in between and what all ties together. And that is so far beyond what is possible to be taught in a 6 year or 6 month boot camp that it's almost laughable for someone to be, yeah, this is absolutely everything I need,
Right.
especially as having, I wrote a curriculum for 2U. So I was a instructor and I was the hand raiser quite a few times to say, "Hey, this is outdated," or "Hey, there's a better way we can do this," or "Maybe there's a different technology we can use," because Envision is very difficult and not to beat a dead horse literally, but yeah, Envision didn't do themselves any favors in that sense. But I wrote curriculum that had to be edited and re-edited because I am a very wordy person. I want to give as much information as possible, and it's limited. What we got pushback from with the editors and the learning designers was they're not going to read this much text. They're not that interested in learning the details. Oh, okay. That's a got to recalibrate my brain with that association. So there was a ton of information I would have loved to have taught, but there's just no way it could have been crammed into a 6 month experience. And there's what will the market bear in terms of a product? And apparently a 9 or 12 month boot camp was just never going to sell.
Right, yeah, because you wanted to include all that additional
Oh, yeah.
context.
Yeah. And this is why one of the main reasons that I ended up deciding I'm gonna build an apprenticeship agency because I see that there are thousands of students out here now who have either completed a boot camp or in the process of completing a boot camp, and they're just not prepared to be hired. It's not that they're not worth being hired, it's that they cannot perform in a way that hiring managers really need people to do, especially when we have industries that move so quickly. We are currently dealing with generative AI products in literally every technical product I can think of, and many that don't need an AI feature. These students coming out of boot camp, they've never handed off work to an actual developer. They've simulated it, but they've never done it. They've never worked with an actual product manager or project manager, product owner. They don't really know the difference between those roles. They don't truly understand how to do research. They know how to follow some instructions, but if you handed them a new project and said, Greenfield, what do you want to research? They'd revert back to whatever it is that they came up with for their first project because they've never experienced being able to truly flex that muscle.
Sure. Do you find that these boot camps are, shall I say, catering toward that order taker? They're telling them what to do rather than having the students exercise that critical thinking and decide, hey, I need to do research in this way for this thing. Or are they rather saying, you need to do this, check this box as far as the research goes?
I'm gonna nod my head so hard for the yes, it's an order taker, especially, and I hate saying this, but especially around UX research. And I'm sure you see so much of this. People who I am assuming reach out to you all the time for help to say, "Hi, I wanted to do this research." And you're like, "This is the same question I saw the last three people who asked me this question asked on their interview questions." And that's not meaningful. So what I think is required is for them to learn how to think more critically and have their ideas and their questions challenged. And that is, again, not typically found in a boot camp scenario. One of my friends, Ryan Davidson, he's in the gaming industry. He's not a UX designer, he's a product manager or product owner. And he had students in the UX UI bootcamp at UC Davis that would actually challenge him or get angry. They would leave snarky feedback to say, I don't appreciate being asked, what do you think? I'm not here to think, I'm here for you to tell me stuff. Are you hearing yourself right now? So, yeah, unfortunately, there is not really an expectation from everybody coming into the boot camp that they are going to be challenged intellectually and need to think critically in order to solve problems. So, what I do know based on what I've seen for those boot camps that I taught for and that I wrote for is that the application process and the assessment, the skills assessment is not, in fact, an application process. It's a sales process. And not to totally crap on boot camps, but like higher education does this too. Like Stanford, their freshman class is some insane number of people. Does that same number of people reach the senior class? No, and not everybody is dropping out to found their own business, their own startup. They are in fact just not escalating through the process the way it is intended, or they're not enjoying it, but they are being challenged in order to reach that higher level of education. And we don't have those kind of guardrails on boot camps. I say we, but I don't teach for boot camps anymore. I do not see those types of guardrails to ensure that there is actually going to be a successful outcome at the end of committing 5 to 10 to $15,000 and 6 months of your time.
Sure, that makes sense. So, one more question about boot camps, Megan. Do you feel like they've changed from 5, 10 years ago to now to meet the changing demands?
I think some of them have evolved, yes. I am not certain. Okay, let me also choose my words carefully here because I don't want to make people feel like this is not a viable career option. I need you to know that I went to a boot camp 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. I went to a coding boot camp. We learned full stack development, and I immediately went out and got a job as a front end developer and became a UX designer through on the job training with I just was in a really great startup and had the opportunity to learn and someone who cared enough to help me learn. And I wouldn't say that their curriculum has stayed the same. In fact, I know that they evolved that curriculum. That was Epicodus here in Portland, and they have actually recently closed. And as much as I'm sad to see them go, I think they also recognize we are not trying to take money from people who are not going to find a successful outcome. We have helped as many people as possible, but there's a cost balance of whether or not it's viable to have that boot camp open. So some of them have in fact evolved. And then some of them have really stagnated. A lot of the complaints that I've heard coming out of the 2U boot camps is that the curriculum is not updated frequently enough. And I think the biggest problem they have is that they have so many universities and so many instructors teaching from the same content that like updating it, it's an overhaul. We spent a year and a half rewriting an entirely new curriculum for an asynchronous format. And I don't actually really know where that went. That was right before edX and 2U merged, and I saw the writing on the wall. Ooh, this sounds like a terrible game. I'm gonna run away now. Blah. And went back to doing UX as my day job. There are other boot camps who don't appear to be using high quality materials to start with, so their evolution is never going to actually show any true value because they weren't bringing value to start with. Not gonna name any names, but I'm starting to make a list.
That's fair. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And
So,
at the
I
same
wanna
time, I make a list, but at the same time, not I think that there are people who are gonna succeed regardless of the program that they go through, and I think that there is a lot to be said for the tenacity, the ability to go through it, but also seek out any other assistance and help, and a lot of those folks who do are the ones who seek external mentorship, not just what's offered by the boot camp, but other people. I know so many seniors and manager levels who are getting people just hitting them up out of the blue, and hopefully you find and connect with someone and that they can help your career grow. But I also know that there's more mentees than there are mentors available, and not every mentor is created the same.
Sure. And it makes sense. You should be gathering information from multiple sources,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, as a researcher, I'm sure you're like, well, I don't just take what one website says or what one user says is their experience. I need to gather contextual details. It's all about gathering information.
Exactly. For sure. So, Megan, I want to switch a little bit and talk about creating content to contribute to your personal brand.
Yeah.
Now, I know that we hear this all the time, create a personal brand for yourself. Well, how does one get started doing that?
Oh man, that's a great question. I feel like my process of finding a personal brand has been fully trial and error, mostly error, a couple of wins. I feel like I have finally figured out my color palette, which is the least important part of the process. Maybe I used to laugh when I would connect this to if you're planning a wedding, your colors are the least important part of it. You should pick a date first. Like the priority is not there, but I think I went with colors and fonts first. I've been working on it for a number of years, and it still feels weird to think of myself as having a personal brand, but now that I've started building an agency, it's really closely tied to my personal brand because I guess I am the one true source for my content and my information. So I'm really just trying to figure out what do I come across as for people, and I not interviewed, I sent a survey to people at different times, students and friends and coworkers and family, people who know me really well. And I just wanted to say, what words come to mind when you think of me? What do you think my personality is? If you were trying to describe me to someone else, what words would you use? And some things really came out of that just totally resonated. If I was one of those singing bowls, this was the ding, the resonant. You're like, oh, this is me. And it was cheerful, relentlessly positive, and supportive, and kind, and encouraging, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's totally me." A little sarcastic, definitely. I didn't actually double check before we started recording whether or not I should curse, so we're gonna tip that towards being polite and clean language so we don't have to put immature content on here, but it's mostly just finding out how am I perceived, and is that what I want to continue to align myself with and put out content that's like that. So it is actually through trial and error helped me find not just my brand personality with the colors and fonts, but also the tone and the voice that I use to build the content, which isn't something I would have paid attention to a few years ago.
Sure. So, tell me a little bit about that journey of trial and error. What
Oh
worked?
gosh.
Yeah.
Let's see. It feels like a million years ago, but my first foray into building a brand was when I wrote for an online newsletter, not a newsletter. It was a zine online. This is the late early 2000s. Oh, we're aging ourselves. That's okay. Back in the day where we had to figure out how to write our own HTML, I really want this link in this blog post to open into a new tab, and you had to actually go Google or ask Jeeves, perhaps, how that worked when I first started writing, and I wrote under a pseudonym because I had some opinions and I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted them associated with my real name. And one of the pieces of feedback that I got from another writer was, "You have a great voice. You should be proud of it and you should be excited to share it alongside your name and your face." Oh, that's very scary. But that encouragement was really helpful to start figuring out, what is my voice? What do I want to put out on the internet? Essentially, since that's where everything lives now. And over the years, and I do think it's probably been 15 or 20 years at this point. Yeah, so that was the early 2000s. I have continued to evolve that, and it's been primarily through writing. I've written for different websites. I've written a couple of books, several of which are no longer available on Amazon because I don't the topic matter is something I don't want to talk about ever again in my life. It was weddings. I wrote a book a long time ago about having a wedding for $1,000, and I ended up building an entire website around that, built an entire brand around that, and I got really tired of people who have a budget of $500, but I would really like to arrive in a horse-drawn carriage, and I'm like, "You people are insane. I cannot." So, that's how that went in the toilet. I sold that company, it was amazing, but it was through this effort of, what is this? I started a brand of helping because I had done so much work with people who were building a or planning a wedding on a budget, that I connected to other people in the wedding industry and wanted to facilitate them having a better experience with these crazy brides, and was like, "How do we build a better wedding business?" I started that. I never took it anywhere, but because I was tired of weddings, but it was just so interesting to build these different personalities of what is connected to what, and what am I sharing, and how am I building authority in this niche that I've developed, and finding myself posting online really led me to build a social media brand. it did actually cause me to delete some social media accounts. I deleted Twitter and I deleted Facebook years ago because that's not where I wanted my brand to be. I didn't want to engage at that level. Twitter just makes me, it's like a dumpster fire, literally a dumpster fire that like every third person throws a match into just to see what happens. And that's not positive. I'm not going to do that. And I focused on building content on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And I'm still figuring out what that looks like for me.
Yeah. So much to unpack there, Megan. Woo, lots of great stuff. I want to first talk about, and I feel like this is a take, the bravery it takes to actually come to terms with a brand. And you pivoted. You were focused on something. You talked a little bit about personalities, right? And morphing a little bit. Talk about how you actually get that strength. Maybe it's overcoming that imposter syndrome, coming to that point where you're ready to say, this is my brand. How do you get there?
That's such a good question. How do you get there? How do you eventually work through that and determine who your brand personality and your whole brand style is? I will actually throw this back to something that it's feedback that I never expected to receive. My dad and I aren't necessarily terribly close. And one of the pieces of feedback he gave me probably a decade ago has always stuck with me, which is I really respect the fact that you've been knocked down so many times and yet you never fail to get back up again. Oh, but is that not what you're supposed to do? I didn't know there was an option to not get back up again. So I feel like everything's worth trying at least once. I also, at a much younger age, I've just done some things that I didn't at the time realize were bold. And they really were. Like I moved across the country to another country because I met a dude online. And as sarcastic and silly as that sounds, that opened up my worldview from living in South North Carolina, North South Carolina, whatever you want to say. It was literally on the line dividing North and South Carolina that I grew up and how small my world was. And then I moved to Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada and started an entirely new life. And that was really the formative time of I get to determine whatever I want to be. Nobody in Victoria or Vancouver knew who I was. I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't change my hair or do anything that would be super dramatic. I didn't Gone Girl myself, but it was just so different that I felt it was possible. Everything was possible. And even the things that didn't work out super great, I got kicked out of Canada. They were extremely polite. They are, after all, Canadian. But they were like, "We do, in fact, need you to leave. You did not fill out any paperwork, nor did you pay taxes." And I'm like, "Oh, so it turns out that's required."
Um,
Uh, and I sat in the airport for 12 hours and I was immediately on my laptop on monster.com. Remember those days? And found a job. Found a job as a flight attendant. I had never even thought once about being a flight attendant in my entire life. And suddenly that's when I found myself on an interview and I figured it out. So it all boils down to very long answer. Everything is figure outable. I think a lot of people they close their own doors because they think it's not possible. Or if someone found success that they see, well, then I'll never be able to do that because they already found that success. Well, Madonna existed and Gwen Stefani came along in my teenage years and they both have success. None of this is a zero sum game. So it's okay to try. It's okay to fail. I think right now people don't feel like that's the case because everything is so hyper visible. We're just always online and making a mistake can cause mockery and judgy people and building a thick enough skin to say, okay, so you laughed at me. I'm not going to go crawl under my bed and say, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I think I'll go eat worms. I mean, you can, but that sounds like a really sucky rest of your life. And that's not what you came to this planet to experience. So dust yourself off. It's okay to cry. And it's okay to be like, wow, that was a really mean comment. I did not appreciate that. But it's also okay to try again. There are people who reinvent themselves all the time. And sure, somebody on Reddit is going to have an opinion, but that person who was willing to try found one more avenue to pursue success or to find out what they didn't want.
yeah, that's great. And it makes me think of the ties to user experience, right? So much risk, so much trying new things, so much, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but let's do it.
Yeah,
You almost need that mindset to succeed in user experience as well.
absolutely you do. That is actually such a really closely tied idea. You've actually kind of blown my mind for a second because I'm like, wait. Maybe that is why I'm so successful. And I say successful knowing that there are many people more successful than me. But maybe that's why I've been so successful in my career and in my niches because I'm just willing to try it out and be damned to the consequences. Okay, that was embarrassing. Oh, I split my pants and literally or figuratively in front of y'all. But the people who found me charming and entertaining were like, we love you regardless. And the people who were going to judge, they were going to judge anyways. So being willing to put it out there, just like a product founder, somebody who's like, I think this is crazy, but I think there's a market for it. They're willing to do it. Basically, you got to be the person that's willing to go on Shark Tank and be like, hi, sharks, we have an idea for you today and really put it out there. And it's going to suck when Kevin O'Leary or whatever his name is it O'Leary? Leary? Doesn't matter. When one of the guys looks at you and goes, that's trash. I don't want it. I'm out. They're doing it for TV points. It
Oh,
actually
sure.
is no judgment on you. So if you could try, there's some quote that I'm trying to remember as I'm saying this. If you knew you couldn't fail or something, what would you actually try? What would you give a shot for? Because either way, you learn something. You learn what you don't want, or you learn that you're really good at something.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's key, right? You tried several other businesses, you were a flight attendant, and you didn't learn that those were not for you until you did them for a
Right.
while.
And honestly, being a flight attendant was pretty dope for about 5.5 years. And then I actually wanted to hang out and be home occasionally. And that's not conducive to a flight attendant lifestyle. They don't want that.
For sure. For sure. So you mentioned earlier you chose writing as your content creation strength
Yeah.
or touch point. Tell me a little bit about why you chose writing as your place and how that's going.
You ask such good questions. I think the writing is an innate draw. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a talent. Many of my critics would probably say she's not talented. That's also totally fine. But it was something that I always enjoyed. I was the little nerd in English class where they would give you 10 vocabulary words and you had to write a sentence for each one. I wrote multiple pages that tied a story together with all of these words, and always I got my bonus points. I will do anything for a gold star. So that really drove me to be more creative, and the positive feedback I got from my teachers, especially in the writing and creative worlds, not necessarily the math and science worlds. They were like, please don't be creative. This is actual data. But it's so interesting to tell a story about it. So it was just a real natural aptitude that I found. And it came easy for me because it's another way to communicate with other humans. And there's nothing more than I love that there's nothing more that I love other than other human. I don't know. I love other humans. I love connecting with people, especially good people, but you don't know if they're awesome or not awesome until you actually connect with them. So I proceed on the assumption that they're going to be awesome. And then I'm always surprised if they're not.
Sure. And how do you feel the world of writing is being affected by AI and tools that are seemingly writing things for you?
That is a really fun question because you're right. We are in an evolutionary period right now for writing and generative AI because it's so documented. It's something that these machine learning algorithms can actually grab onto and start assessing what words might likely be next. The first attempts at generative AI writing were pretty trash, but they are getting really, really good. I actually use AI with some of my writing. I've been testing out different things. Something I have found helpful that would be helpful for anyone to learn from is the Hemingway app. I am a wordy bee. I will use 25 words when 10 will do because I have a very rich vocabulary. And for some reason, I love using it. But that doesn't make my content accessible to everyone. So a lot of the folks that I'm seeing out here are not college degree. I also don't have a college degree. I just read a lot. But not everybody has spent their life stuffing books under their shirt. So when your parents kick you outside and lock the door back in the elder millennial days where it's drink from the hose, you're fine. I would read all the time. I read well above my level. And that's given me a bit of an edge in this world of AI content. I see folks who would love to get into writing and they're using these tools, but they are not editing any of the content that comes out. And that's not writing. That's just asking the machine to barf out something. What I'm really loving is the tools that help you find citations for content. The biggest struggle I have always had is I will read something, I'll assimilate it, I'll learn it, and then I'll spit it out very similarly, but I won't know how to attribute it to the right person. And that's actually meaningful in the world that we live in UX, because I'm not reinventing the wheel. In fact, most of UX is not reinventing the wheel. So it's important to both credit sources, but also appropriately cite information so that others can learn from your stuff. And so that's something I've been using. Jenny.ai. I'm still testing out to see how accurate it is. It tends to pull from very popular articles as opposed to more niche content, but I'm exploring what that looks like so that I can also continue to learn, because when you find a citation, well, then of course I'm going to go read this abstract or something. Ooh, let me go read this article, learn more about something. So really it just facilitates the creative process and just encourages me to keep learning.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Perplexity? They also
Oh,
give you sources for their information.
oh, nice. Okay, I will check out Perplexity.
Yeah,
Thank
and as a journalist at heart and education, sources are really important, and there's a lot of garbage information out there that people are regurgitating, and they don't know what it comes from, they don't know what it means.
They don't know if
And
it's real.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So you mentioned people are kind of using it, trying to shortcut success, maybe in a
Yeah.
sense. Do you see that happening more? What do you feel like the trend might be going in what direction there?
Oh, okay. I am seeing it more. I think it's unfortunate when I'm seeing it on established websites. You and I know that there are some words that we're tired of seeing this because it's crucial or it's whatever, because we know that that almost certainly came from an AI or a generative prompt. My biggest frustration is when I see content that is so clearly copy pasted that it says, certainly I can write you an article about blah. And then they copy and paste that part too. You're like, guys, could you put in some effort, any effort whatsoever to review this? And I think we are kind of short circuiting our critical thinking and processing. If we were to hand everyone an SAT test right now across the board, we would see scores at least marginally lower than in previous years, because we are so overwhelmed with information as humans, as a society, and it is difficult for us to cognitively process all of it. We are taking mental shortcuts as often as possible so that we can try to keep up and not be overwhelmed and consumed by data. But because of that, we are taking the shortcuts of, I'm sure it's fine, and then copy and paste, and it's not actually fine. And if there was any advice I would give someone, especially as an early career designer, it is do not take the output of any generative AI exactly as it is. If you need to, and it feels like, well, it's close enough, take it to a word editing, break it into sentences, not a paragraph, but break it into sentences, reduce that cognitive load for yourself, and then read it out loud. You will be surprised at how dumb you sound, just you in a room, when you read it yourself and you're like, oh, well, that's not at all what I meant to say. But because they're not taking that one extra step and they're willing to just throw it out into the universe, yeah, I don't know how we're going to clean this up, because what's on the internet stays on the internet. The opposite of Las Vegas.
That's true.
Unfortunately, the Wayback Machine will capture that. And now we are training future generations of children, humans, and AI to rely on information that is likely and or possibly not true.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. Today, I asked some members of my team, what are some of the biggest challenges you are having on this UX team? I was just kind of
Wow.
getting some ideas.
Good
And
manager.
a couple of people, it was very obvious they had typed it into ChatGPT because no one writes with a bullet point, a bolded word, colon, and then a little descriptive sentence. That was such a telltale. Now, was it the
Yeah.
full 10 that
Did it give you the double star,
ChatGPT
the
gives you?
double asterisk too? You're like, okay, seriously, you couldn't have formatted that so the markdown. No.
Right.
Okay.
They took their 10 bullet list and cut it down to 3, but I was like, wow, you had to ask GPT what your biggest problems.
Right, which means you don't even have the self-awareness to check and go, "What are my problems?" we're shortcutting the first, which is the idea generation stage. You take this word prompt, your question, and go blah into ChatGPT, but you don't think, wait, is there anything more that I need to add to this? And part of that I do think goes to, this is not your team. This happened on my team too. Let's be real. And probably most people's teams. We are so swamped with work. And I don't think anyone truly understands how much time it takes to do anything anymore. It's very difficult to scope anything because we're constantly struggling with Miller's Law. We're trying to maintain, here's my personal life. I got to worry about dinner and oh crap, you have laundry and camp starts in 2 weeks. I got to write a check for that for my kids or whatever. And then we've got product market research. And then I'm being pulled into this meeting with the developers because they don't understand the interaction style or whatever. So we're pulled in so many different directions. It's almost like, how is it possible for anyone to have the time to thoughtfully answer, what problems are you having? Honestly, the answer is I don't have enough time to process information, but I also don't shut off some of those pipelines of information when I could. And that's probably because of the ADHD overwhelm of, I would like to distract myself from how much I need to do. So like it's a self-fulfilling little prophecy kind of thing. I don't know how we're going to get out of it.
Yeah, that's really true. You've got Teams and email and your phone and, "Oh, wait, that's right, I was gonna watch this video, and, oh, yeah, I was gonna check this site
How
out."
many tabs do you currently have open right now? I'm embarrassed to tell you. I have
Right.
multiple screens minimized with multiple tabs in each of them. I'm like, I'll get back to you,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's it. It's multiple browsers, multiple instances. Yeah.
It's
It's a
bananas. We're just trying to survive it all, and then we wonder why all we wanna do on the weekend is watch YouTube videos. It's because our brain is trying so hard to reset and help us live our healthy next day, but it's not really working great, and I'm just like, I interrupted myself with a thought to say, and I'm not sure how we're going to solve that with an ever-evolving tech landscape. We're just building more and more and more tools to assist us with what we actually need to do, which is reduce, reduce, reduce.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So I wanna go to a little bit, back to content creation,
Yeah.
and I wanna talk about the pros and cons of doing so.
Okay. Do you have any suggested pros and cons, or am I coming up with pros and cons of being a content creator?
I'd like to
Oh.
hear what's worked well for you and maybe not so well for you.
That's a tough one. Okay, so I will say that it doesn't matter what direction you choose to go in content creation, you've got to give it enough time to see if it's actually worth the effort. I started a YouTube channel a couple of years ago and I just knew that I enjoy video content. I watch lots of it myself. There's different types of videos that I really enjoy. There's a couple of creators that I just, you could captivate my attention for hours at a time if I allowed it to just autoplay. And I wanted to create content similar to that. So I've been taking classes. I took a class on Skillshare from Marcus Brownlee, of all people. He's got an amazing YouTube channel. He's been reviewing products, tech products for years and years and years. And now he's one of the most well known creators, I mean, at least in my world, for anything tech related. And he's also a genuinely cool person, it seems. So I took a class of his on Skillshare just for, how do I plan out a video? It used to be turn it on, one shot, and hopefully I didn't screw it up. And I have found various tools over the years to help edit some of that down. Quality was trash when I first started, and I got better and better and better. And I invested in a little bit more equipment like this light that I love so much and started to find myself. I think it is. It's more like I grew up into where I'd like to be. So I first started, actually, I started practicing by reading someone else's content. I actually started my YouTube channel by reading Letters from an American by Heather Cox Richardson, the daily newsletter, because it was something that I read consistently. I really liked the message of, and it was short enough that I could get the practice of being comfortable on screen. So I wasn't even using my content. And it's almost similar to some of the reaction videos that you might see, except I wasn't just passively watching and laughing whenever something happened. I was reading it out loud. I've deleted them since then because I stumbled over my tongue a lot. And she also created her own podcast. Finally, we actually get to listen to it, which is wonderful. So it was a really good experience for me. And I built up I think that was where I got my first 40 viewers on YouTube who have probably since unsubscribed because they're like, this isn't at all what we signed up for. And now one of the things that I'm loving is the early career designer portfolio review. It is very much similar, but I am talking through kind of almost a cognitive walkthrough as I look through an early career designer's portfolio. And because it's me, I am relentlessly positive, even if it's like, wow, this is not to the level that we would expect for you to reach junior designer at Netflix or something, because every company is looking for something different. So, what got somebody a job at Netflix and Google is not going to be the same that gets you a job at some small company you've never heard of. So, I just try to give thoughtful, meaningful feedback about, hey, you've got some spacing issues, you got a lot of misspellings, and people really notice that kind of thing. You're using the same images that you didn't edit, so you've got a lot of text in the image, which makes it not very accessible. So, what I am able to do over time is kind of give them context from all these other portfolio reviews that I've done. And I'm hoping I've gotten good feedback from it. I'm hoping, though, that it helps people improve. Whether or not they find it, that's not my problem.
Are you finding that your advice is being taken, or do you even know?
Some people do come back and say, I am making changes. In fact, one person I reviewed just a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned something really specific on their portfolio and was trying to show it to another mentee, and they had already made the change on their portfolio. And I was like, those are the people who I know just instinctively are going to do better in this industry because they are willing to take feedback and they're not caught up in the feedback is their ego. That is something that you really have to eventually overcome. It also was a struggle for me at the beginning of my career where I would turn bright red and 1,000-degree heat coming off my skin because I'm just like, I'm so ashamed that I did it wrong the first time. You're learning. It's okay to do it wrong. There is no design emergency where, like, oh no, your blue square that should have been a green square murdered 3 people. That is not the case. Everybody chill. So just being willing to take the feedback, and I also say, "Hey, I am not the be all end all. I am not in a place where I'm currently hiring early career designers." So my feedback comes from I was an instructor and I've been mentoring early career designers for like 6 years at this point. So mine is just one opinion. Someone else, especially who is at a position to hire you or who is in a position that is similar to someone that would hire you, theirs is going to be more valuable. So seek out multiple rounds of feedback before you make any changes, unless it's something like it's the spelling on this. Otherwise, it's just an egregious error. But everything else is pretty flexible. I will say I'm really tired of seeing post-it notes and an affinity diagram. That is the least useful piece of information. I mean, second only to the fake user personas.
Ooh,
Um, but yeah, that one I know. I'm sure you love that one. But that is yeah, no one wants to see that. A hiring manager doesn't give a crap about your pictures, whether it's a Miro screenshot or an actual picture where you put stuff up on the wall. I did it too. I'm not kidding. I still have at least one case study where there isn't in fact real picture of my Post-it notes, but I was doing object-oriented UX and I was making all of the objects and aligning things. It was fun, but nobody wants to see that. They wanna know, what did you learn from doing the affinity diagram that made you do the next thing? The affinity diagram is just an output. It's not an outcome.
right. And I think it's a rite of passage to
Yes.
include that in your portfolio so that you'll learn to not do it later.
It's like your sweet 16. I love it. That's amazing. Right. That is true. You can do it in 1, maybe 2 case studies, and I'll forgive it, but after that, I'm like, "Stop. No one cares."
Yeah. Especially if you expect me to see your analysis results in a
Right.
screenshot.
Right. Don't give me a screenshot with a bunch of words in it. I know this is so funny because I am currently learning way more about accessibility because of what I've been developing. And it is so interesting to me how we don't take our own advice as UX designers because we're like, well, that's true. There's 20% of the world with disabilities, but most of them are not going to come to my website. How do you know that hiring manager doesn't have a color vision deficiency? How do you know for sure that hiring manager doesn't have dyslexia? How do you know for sure that they don't have migraines and get triggered by different things on the website? It doesn't matter that they're not likely to be there. That's a cop out for people who don't feel like doing any kind of accessibility. So there's some bare minimum stuff that it really should not pass the filters, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I was in a workshop this week and I was like, oh, by the way, for those who are colorblind, the light blue stickies are the bigger ones and those are the headers. And my partner in the workshop was like, good call. We're assuming a small group, 8 people, very unlikely that one of them is colorblind, but you just don't know.
I mean, the internet has definitely changed some personalities, but I at least try not to make anyone else feel bad about something that they're not bringing to the table. And we don't want to out them for something that they can't help. If you have color vision deficiency and it has not impacted your work output so far, then why would I put you on blast for everyone to know that you have a disability and therefore add some sort of shading to how they're perceiving that person? So that's just kindness first, people first. Man, I really like that. You said that or somebody else said that? I love that. I gotta remember to put that in my workshops.
I think you just said it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's your workshop this week with the light blue stickies that I'm referring to. Called that out specifically. I love it. I just
Right,
learned something.
because a digital whiteboard doesn't have the hatch marks and the secondary distinguishing feature to make that look different for somebody
Yeah.
who had some color blindness. Yeah, I hear you. So, Megan, I want to wrap up with a content question around what advice do you have to someone who is thinking about creating content to contribute to their personal brand?
I feel like you've already gotten this answer from a million people, probably, which is just start. But really and truly, the first hurdle to get through is your own psychological barrier. That voice on the inside of you that maybe has a voice that's similar to someone who was not terribly nice to you in your childhood. But it's that voice that we use in ourselves. And we're like, you're not good enough. No one's going to read that. You're stupid. You're ignorant. And frankly, for your first few 100 pieces of content. You might not get any claps on Medium. You might not get any thumbs up on YouTube, and that is okay. Do it anyways, because getting past that first barrier, getting into a comfort zone, turns out I can put out something and nobody liked it and nobody tried to murder me for it. Why am I going back to murder? This is weird. But there's an evolutionary fear we have inside of us of this is scary and therefore my mind thinks it's the tiger trying to kill me. But that is just a fear and you will talk yourself out of doing something if you think too hard about it. So if you're worried about perception or if you're worried you're not very good at it, collect a small group of people that you can vaguely trust, not to blow smoke at you and be like, "Oh, it's amazing," when it's really not, but who can give you real and thoughtful feedback and be open to taking that feedback. Maybe your voice is not appropriate for a professional level of brand development, and that's okay. It's okay to learn that and to grow from there. But also at the same time, like if 10 people tell you this content is not awesome and you're like, I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyways. Okay, but be aware that it's not gonna land with everyone. But just get started, give it a shot. And I will also put this offer out here. If you run into that situation when you're scared to start, send it to me. I'm happy to review it. And if you have met me or seen my brand at all, it is relentless positivity. So I will be kind and I will be honest.
Yeah, that's a great offer. People should take you up on that.
Yeah, right.
Well, there is a YouTube person that I watch, and his slogan is "Just hit record." And that
Yeah.
really resonated with me because I'm like, "Wait, but I don't even know what tool to use. I won't know how to edit it when it sucks.
It's
What's my
okay.
lighting supposed to be?" All these things were, I don't know." And I was like, "Nah, screw it. I'm just gonna record something and see what happens." And who early days still, who knows? I'm still in
Right.
that learning and see what lands and see what happens, and I think, it's that just hit record, just write it, just do it. This I know it's a cliche, but it really is a
No,
powerful
the
tool.
cliche, just do it. Hit record. Yes, you're gonna feel awkward when you're like, "Ah, it stumbled over my tongue." You should see how my videos start, and then I take them into any video editor, and I'm like, "Chop that out." And I learned how to give myself visual cues of, like, even learned this from Yadi the other day, Yadi Arroyo. Do this so that on camera, when you get to that point in your video, you're like, "Nope, scratch that. That was really awful. I definitely stumbled over my dog barked in the middle of it." It's okay. You can always delete that. Like, live streaming, maybe not your very first content creation, but, like, have a break. There's a ton of, I think I started out with, Wisecut was great. They did AI editing. They just chopped out the silences and mushed things together, and I was like, "It's a reasonable approximation." That's probably still on my YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, I love it. So, Last question for you, Megan. Is there anything else that we didn't touch upon today that you'd like to share?
I will tell you, we didn't touch upon the level 11 technology, and it feels very toot my own horny, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm building an apprenticeship agency because I see that there is a market need for some kind of skilled training that is paid because I'm tired of seeing people who have invested in themselves be asked to work for free. I do not feel like you should be asked to work for free. So I'm building an apprenticeship agency where I'm helping people learn how to do really specific things, which is a usability and accessibility evaluation on a website. We are growing from tiny little baby websites with 2 and 3 pages and just understanding what does accessibility look like so that we can bring more value in our real world careers as we grow those careers. So I am building that and I am building it out loud, which is, yeah, a little terrifying because it is all content creation. But this is my cause. This is what I know I'm on earth to do. I want to pay people to get their first year of experience. And honestly, some hiring managers in the future are going to be like, I'm really glad Megan did that because now I know that the people I'm hiring have some real world experience and they can actually, I hate this phrase, hit the ground running or at least know how to ask good questions rather than being completely blindsided by working in a corporate environment and just not being prepared at all.
Yes, I love that. That mentor-mentee kind of mindset, but it's more than that. Apprentice,
Yeah.
so many other professions have
Yes.
that model, right?
Skilled tradespeople have 2 years of minimum. It depends on the state, depends on where you're learning, but 2 years of minimum paid training where you are shadowing someone as you learn how to install HVAC units or electrical wiring. And we are knowledge workers, and maybe it's not the same as a skilled trade, but is it not? We have bare minimum requirements for accessibility and usability that we should meet, and those are the bread and butter of what it means to be a UX designer. Now, I can't speak for a UI designer because they like to get fancy with things, but in UX, there are standards that need to be met, and you should learn those in an effective environment, and you should be paid to do so. So that's my goal. Don't
I
see a
love
lot of
it.
people doing it out here. And the reason I'm doing it out loud is because it's all open source. There is no proprietary algorithm. There are plenty of, I believe that there are many companies and government agencies that need to work with us, and they are going to have a more positive experience because they're working with skilled tech technical what am I thinking of? Skilled knowledge workers.
Great. Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to see how this evolves and grows because it's so critical. What I love about this idea is it's not go volunteer your time at a rescue website who those people don't know what UX is. They don't know
They
what they
don't know it.
want.
How do they guide you?
They
How do you know if you're
don't.
doing it wrong? How do you know if you're building bad habits into your work and into your process if you don't have someone senior going, "Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I would probably do this, this, and the other." And just a really small kind of interaction, you don't get that. This is the frustrating thing I see with anything that's volunteer based is if you get what you pay for. You're not getting any sort of supervision or mentorship, and that's where I'm also seeing some of these boot camps not provide real mentorship because they just don't have the skills. They don't have enough of the mentors around to do it. So I'm building that structure into the business as I do it, and yeah, we're gonna fail sometimes, and that's gonna be okay. But ultimately, we're gonna succeed.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm really looking forward to seeing that go
Thank you.
awesome into something awesome. So I'm going to say thank you so much, Megan, for your time. It was so great to chat with you.
Same. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Check out all my interviews with industry leaders on BlatzChatz.